To the Varnok, a reptilian race bred for the hunt, humans were soft and unthreatening. Their kind lacked claws, fangs, or armored scales. Their worlds seemed vulnerable, scattered across the fringe systems of the spiral arm. It was the perfect setup for conquest, or so the Varnok believed. Their superior hunting skills had brought countless species to extinction. They thrived on fear and domination, and in humans they saw nothing but another weak race to conquer. The Varnok had no idea that they were about to awaken something ancient and terrifying in return. The first assaults came fast and brutal. Remote human colonies, light years from the central systems, were wiped from existence. Orbital bombardments scorched the skies. Survivors spoke in hushed, broken voices of red-eyed monsters descending in droves, tearing through communities with terrifying precision. One by one, settlements fell. A planet's scream would echo into the stars, followed by silence. The Varnoks savored the terror they inspired. It became a performance, a ritual hunt where they crushed resistance and left ruins in their wake. They broadcasted their victories to uninhabited systems, taunting humanity with proof of their destruction. Each massacre was a message. Resistance was useless. But the Varnok made one grave mistake. They mistook fear for surrender. Humanity was thrown into chaos at first. Panic overtook colonies that had never seen war. Families were ripped apart, civilian vessels disappeared, and governments scrambled for answers. Those who survived the raids were haunted, scarred by what they'd seen, their grief buried under layers of confusion and rage. But even in the depths of despair, a flicker of defiance began to burn. Not everyone was caught off guard. On a barren moon orbiting a gas giant in Sector 9, a facility known as Hollow Point came to life. This was the home of Phantom Core. Hidden for decades, Phantom Core had been a black-budget project developed far from the public eye. It was conceived by a rogue faction within the Human Defense Network that saw the stars as a battlefield long before the Varnok arrived. Its members were the best humanity had. Elite soldiers, engineers, scientists, and tacticians. Men and women who had seen things no one else believed. People like Commander Grant Mercer, a combat strategist with a mind built for asymmetry, and Dr. Evelyn Cross, the brilliant tech architect responsible for humanity's most advanced weapon systems. They had prepared. Phantom Core had spent years developing stealth technology, energy-based weaponry, and AI-assisted drones that could navigate hostile environments with surgical precision. Their ships could vanish into the void, their weapons could tear through armor like tissue, and their drones could swarm a battlefield in seconds. All of it had been kept hidden, waiting for the moment humanity would truly need it. That moment had come. Without warning, Phantom Core launched their counteroffensive. Cloaked strike teams moved silently into Varnok-controlled space. No announcements, no threats, only action. The first raids were ghost stories. Varnok hunter groups vanishing without a trace, ships discovered torn apart in orbit, evidence of energy weapons far beyond their understanding. The hunters had become the hunted. Commander Mercer orchestrated the operations like a conductor, each strike precise, each escape clean. Varnok outposts were disabled, supply chains severed, key leaders eliminated in the dead of night. Drone clouds drifted silently through Varnok bases, mapping, disabling, killing. It was not vengeance. It was survival with a purpose. The Varnok reeled, their arrogance shattered by what they called the shadow response. What had once been a one-sided slaughter became a spiraling nightmare for them. They scrambled to adapt, sending reinforcements, deploying new sensor networks. But Phantom Core stayed one step ahead. With every battle, the narrative shifted. The Varnok were no longer unchallenged predators. Still, they were not done. Shamed by their defeats, the Varnok launched a renewed offensive, this time with greater coordination and bloodlust. Waves of ships, reinforced infantry, and mechanized beasts swept across contested sectors. Colonies fortified themselves in desperation. Human civilians took up arms. Engineers retrofitted mining drones into battlefield units. Children became orphans. The cost of resistance rose with every passing day. In one infamous engagement over the planet Bexar, Phantom Core deployed an experimental stealth cruiser, the Obsidian Ghost, to dismantle a Varnok fleet. Commander Mercer led a daring mission to sever the enemy's logistics routes, crippling fuel supplies and forcing their armada to retreat. It was a vital turning point. The humans lost half the squad, but the blow it dealt to the Varnock momentum was worth the sacrifice. On another front, a remote outpost codenamed Grayson's Hold became the stage for a legendary defense. Outnumbered 20-1, a mix of Phantom Corps officers and militia held the line for 4 days using automated defense turrets, self-replicating drones, and battlefield AI. Survivors would later say it was the first time they'd seen the Varnock retreat in confusion. Despite the victories, something was wrong. The Phantom Corps' intelligence division, led by data analyst Corbin Lane, began noticing inconsistencies. Intercepted transmissions didn't align. Varnock's strategy had shifted in ways that didn't add up. Missing movements, unexplained gaps, bizarre long-range communication patterns. Lane found deep code anomalies embedded in their encryption, hidden signatures, repeated patterns too complex to be natural. Someone else was pulling the strings. Rumors began to spread of a third presence, an ancient race, unseen and long forgotten, manipulating the war from behind the curtain. They were not myth, they were real. Fragments of Varnock historical records referred to them only as the Architects, a species older than stars, said to be observers, experimenters, gods by another name. And then they arrived. It was during the Battle of Hollow Expanse that everything changed. Human and Varnock forces clashed over a mineral-rich asteroid belt when something tore reality open. A vessel of impossible design emerged from hyperspace, smooth and vast, glowing with colors no eye could fully comprehend. The battlefield froze. Weapons powered down. No commands given. Both sides stood silent. The Architects had come. A transmission echoed across all frequencies, not in words but in thoughts, images and emotions projected directly into every sentient mind present. They revealed the truth. This war had not been coincidence. It had been constructed, a long-term plan to test the strength of emerging species, to weaken them, to observe their response. They had pit humanity and the Varnock against each other like gladiators in a cosmic arena. And now, with both bloodied and broken, the final test was at hand. Humanity's enemies were no longer just the Varnock. They were pawns in a much larger game. The revelation shook both civilizations. Trust was non-existent. Hatred burned hot. Yet survival demanded something unthinkable: cooperation. An uneasy summit was held on the neutral station Echelon Prime, a derelict outpost floating between disputed territories. Representing humanity was General Alex Wallace, a veteran with iron resolve and a reputation for winning against impossible odds. The Varnock sent Commander Spar, a scarred warrior known more for his ferocity than diplomacy. Tension hung in the air like static. Neither side trusted the other. Not after the blood that had been spilled, not after the horrors each had inflicted. Wallace demanded accountability for the massacres. Spar accused humans of trickery and dishonor. They argued, they threatened, but they did not walk away. Some voices urged peace. Captain Mira Grant, a decorated Phantom Corps officer who had seen what unity could achieve, pushed hard for collaboration. On the Varnock side, strategist Tarl, considered a cold tactician, viewed the alliance not as friendship but as necessity. He understood the Architects would not discriminate in their annihilation. Hardliners on both sides protested. Some sabotaged the early meetings. Weapons were drawn. Blood was nearly spilled again. But the threat of extinction kept the talks alive. Eventually, a pact was formed. The Human-Varnock Alliance was born. The first combined operations between humans and Varnock were tense, fragile, and watched with suspicion from both sides. Strategies clashed. Commands were questioned. But necessity forced discipline. Humanity's technological prowess meshed with Varnock aggression in brutal harmony. The Alliance struck back. Coordinated assaults targeted known Architect installations. These ancient strongholds were buried deep within asteroid clusters and forgotten moons. The Architect defenses were unlike anything either race had seen: organic metal hybrids, gravity anomalies, sentient drones that anticipated tactics before they were executed. But the Alliance adapted. In the Battle of Iridial Rift, A joint strike force led by Captain Mira Grant and Commander Spar managed to disable a planet-sized weapon orbiting a dead star. Human engineers cracked the shield systems, while Varnock berserkers stormed the interior corridors. The final blow came when a stealth drone deployed by Phantom Core slipped into the reactor core and detonated the energy nexus. The explosion lit the system like a new sun. For the first time, the architects flinched. Victory, however, came at a price. Miscommunication led to heavy casualties. Mistrust triggered false alarms, friendly fire, and missed opportunities. During the campaign over Thalos Minor, a human cruiser accidentally fired on a Varnock scout ship, believing it to be compromised. The mistake nearly shattered the fragile cooperation. Spar was furious. Wallace was forced to pull back operations until investigations cleared the air. Still, as operations continued, a strange phenomenon emerged. Respect, not trust, not yet, but something close. Human Marines began to speak of the Varnock not as monsters, but as warriors. Varnock veterans began calling their human allies by name. In mess halls and deployment chambers, stories were exchanged of losses, of families, of sacrifice. They began to see themselves not as separate victims, but as partners in a war no one had chosen. That fragile unity was nearly destroyed. In the early hours of Operation Iron Veil, a Varnock vessel failed to respond to communication protocols. It entered a high-security zone and transmitted no identification. Human defense systems engaged. The ship was destroyed. But the aftermath revealed a horrifying truth. That vessel had been carrying classified intelligence. A Varnock officer named Rollick had been aboard, and the information he carried included coordinates to hidden architect facilities and codes that could disrupt their planetary networks. But Rollick had not gone rogue. He had been working for the architects. Evidence recovered from the wreckage revealed encrypted transmissions to the enemy, recorded over the past 3 months. Rollick had leaked battle plans, sabotaged missions, and intentionally spread distrust between alliance units. His betrayal had led to over 7,000 unnecessary deaths. The alliance trembled. Finger-pointing exploded. Accusations, demands, protests. General Wallace called an emergency council with Commander Spar and strategist Tarl. Tensions reached a boiling point. Varnock officers stormed out of meetings. Human soldiers refused joint deployments. For a brief moment, it appeared the architects had won. But then came the rain. It was the name given to a coordinated architect strike, unlike anything witnessed before. A fleet of city-sized warships descended on the Joint Command Base orbiting Asteron 9. The sky lit up in every spectrum. Defensive systems failed in seconds. Thousands died in minutes. And both sides realized the truth. The architects no longer needed deception. They had moved to extermination. The survivors of the assault regrouped, bloodied, angry, unified not by ideology, but by survival. Commander Spar delivered a rare speech, translated by human comms, promising vengeance. Wallace responded with the largest mobilization Phantom Corps had ever attempted. There would be no more hesitation. The final campaign began. It was a full-scale assault on the architect's central stronghold, codenamed Black Spire, a twisted tower floating in the gravitational well of a collapsed star. The station was ancient beyond measurement, wrapped in a web of antimatter currents and guarded by sentient constructs that defied logic. The joint fleet arrived cloaked. Over 200 ships, thousands of fighters, human AI command units working alongside Varnock tactical processors. As the fleet engaged, a second wave of cloaked transports moved beneath the chaos, carrying ground forces tasked with disabling the architect command matrix. Captain Mira Grant led the strike team, alongside Varnock General Karth, a towering brute with a mind for siege warfare. Together they breached the inner sanctum of the spire. Inside they found horrors, preserved bodies of extinct species, endless data cores storing experiments, recordings of wars orchestrated from behind veils of time. The truth burned. They were not the first to be tested, but they would be the first to win. As fighting raged in space, the strike team reached the heart of the architect system. Human engineers planted charges, while Varnock warriors fought off waves of biomechanical defenders. One by one, the control nodes fell. The structure began to collapse. But the architects were not done. A final transmission echoed into every mind. An offer. Join us, they said. Become our heirs. Transcend the physical. End the cycle of death. They showed visions of immortality, of peace without war, of thought without form. Some hesitated. Not Wallace. He gave the order. No compromise, the charges detonated. The spire ruptured, sending shock waves through subspace. Architect control systems across the galaxy blinked out. Their warships went dark. Their grip on reality fractured. The predators had overplayed their hand, and now they were gone. In the wake of the final battle, the battlefield was both graveyard and monument. Wreckage drifted across the light years. Burned ships, shattered stations, and broken drones floated silently through space. Survivors stood amid it all, human, Varnock, breathing the same breath, mourning the same losses. The war was over, but peace had to be earned. On the station, Arkenfall, built together by both species, leaders from each side gathered. There were no grand speeches, no parades, just a mutual recognition of what had been endured. Agreements were signed, new protocols were created to prevent manipulation, infiltration, and rogue elements. Research and technology were shared. Mixed units began training together. Trust was not assumed, it was built. Captain Mira continued serving in a new capacity, leading peacekeeping operations across former war zones. Commander Spar returned to Varnock space to unite the scattered clans, ensuring none would fall back into old ways. General Wallace retired, refusing honors or statues. He returned to Earth's outer colonies, helping rebuild from the ashes. A monument was erected on the ruins of Echelon Prime. It bore no flags, no species, only names, names of the fallen, and a message carved into the alloyed stone in both human script and Varnock glyphs. We were enemies. We became survivors. Now we rise as one. From that moment forward, when alien races whispered about humans in Varnock, they spoke not of monsters or prey, not of hunters or ghosts. They spoke of fire forged in silence, of tenacity that could not be broken, and of an alliance born from the heart of annihilation. The galaxy would remember, and so would they.